She thought she could control everything: my life, my son, the way we loved, the way we healed. But I wasn't hers to shape, and he damn sure wasn't hers to break. We weren't props in her perfect picture. We were the mess she couldn't clean up, the fire she couldn't put out. Some background: my mother and I have never had a good relationship. Since I was a child, she's been toxic, controlling, and extremely overbearing in every area of my life, while my siblings were given much more freedom. Things only got worse after I had my child. Me, myself. My child. Entitled Mom, my mother. As mentioned, and I have always clashed. She had a habit of trying to control everything: my money, my personal choices, you name it. The arguments we had could have easily been featured on a reality TV show. Her interference even ruined several relationships I had, both romantic and platonic. When B was born, her need for control intensified. She constantly interfered with how I parented and tried to take over as the main caregiver, acting like she had the final say in all decisions. Her justification? Since I was living under her roof, she believed it gave her full rights as the grandmother to do whatever she pleased. She even went so far as to say that if I didn't like it, I could just give up custody of B and leave. Of course, I refused. I wasn't about to abandon my child. I'll be honest, when B came into my life, I wasn't in a great financial situation. B's father and I had split, which left me with no option but to move back in with EM. I absolutely hated being there. Over the next couple of years, I put up with her behavior while juggling a night job and saving every penny I could. But EM stole from me multiple times. Every time I managed to save something, she'd take it, insisting that my money was her money. That's when I realized I needed a more secure solution and opened a bank account. Before that, I was fine getting paper checks and using the local check cashing service. To keep my money safe, I had to get creative about hiding it until I finally got my debit card. Since the card needed a PIN, I came up with one so obscure that she'd never be able to guess it. One evening, while I was making dinner for my son and me, EM barged into the kitchen demanding to know where I kept my money. I calmly told her that I had opened a bank account. That sent her into a complete meltdown. She demanded my debit card PIN so she could withdraw the funds, and I firmly told her no. Her response? She accused me of being selfish, insisting she deserved the money more than I did since B and I were living under her roof. Then she threatened to destroy the card so neither of us could use it. Thankfully, a friend had once advised me to start recording her behavior whenever she acted out, so I already had my phone ready. When I refused to give her the PIN, she grabbed a pair of scissors and shredded my debit card into pieces. I wasn't too worried. I still had access to my cash, thanks to a well-hidden stash, and I could request a replacement card easily. The next day, I did just that and continued with my routine. After a while, once I had saved up enough money, I started apartment hunting. I found a great place close to work and just a few blocks from a daycare, perfect for B and me. With a friend by my side, I met the landlord, signed the lease, paid the first 3 months' rent in full, and got the keys. I was beyond excited. I went back to EM's house and began packing right away. As expected, she stormed into my room without knocking, demanding to know what I was doing. I immediately grabbed my phone and started recording. I calmly told her that B and I were moving out. Her response? She exploded, yelling at me to tell her where I was taking her child. I refused to answer. So, of course, she called the police. When the officers arrived, she didn't even give me a chance to speak. She launched into a hysterical rant, accusing me of kidnapping her child. Her child? One of the officers looked skeptical at first, but once I explained that B is my son and we were simply leaving, he relaxed. That only sent EM into an even bigger frenzy. She started demanding they arrest me, force me to hand over custody to her, and make me reveal my banking details. One officer let out a long, tired sigh, the kind you give when you're wondering why you were even called in the first place. He calmly explained to my mother that I was an adult, B is my child, and there was absolutely no legal reason to arrest me or force me to give up my rights or my financial information. He added that if she wanted to pursue grandparents' rights, she was welcome to try, but based on her current behavior, she hardly seemed emotionally stable enough to be around any child, especially her own grandchild. That didn't sit well with her. As the officer turned to leave and I continued packing B's belongings, EM snapped. She lunged at me and started clawing at my face. Instinctively, I pushed her away to defend myself. She immediately started screaming that I had assaulted her and demanded the officer arrest me. The officer sighed again and told her plainly that he saw everything. I had clearly acted in self-defense. Then, without missing a beat, he told her that someone was going to jail tonight, and instructed her to put her hands behind her back. I've never been more grateful to the police in my entire life. Update. Part 2. Buckle up, it gets wild. While EM was being escorted to jail for what I like to think of as a well-earned cool-off session, I used that precious window of time to pack up as much as I could. My siblings were initially upset that she'd been arrested, but once I explained everything, they didn't really try to stop me from leaving. I rented a moving van, loaded up all my stuff, and headed to my new apartment with B. A close friend helped me unpack the essentials, set up B's bed, and we celebrated our first night of freedom with Chinese takeout. The feeling of relief hit me like a wave. After years of being manipulated, stolen from, and emotionally suffocated, I was finally free. I cried harder than I ever had before. Still working through it in therapy. Eventually, I had to give up my night job. Finding childcare during those hours was next to impossible, and most of my family had turned their backs on me for hurting EM. But then came a silver lining. I landed a new job that paid nearly $3,000 a month. It was a bit above my experience level, but thankfully it came with full training. That role allowed me to afford the nearby daycare, cover all my bills, and still have enough left over for savings and weekend fun with B. Even though I was relieved to finally be out from under EM's thumb, B would sometimes say he missed her and how much he loved the gifts she used to give him. While I always made sure he had what he needed, life wasn't quite as extravagant as it had been when EM was buying affection with presents. I didn't want to break his heart by painting her as the villain, but I also didn't want to lie. So I explained gently that we no longer saw EM because she hadn't treated me kindly, and I couldn't put up with it anymore. B is 7 now, old enough to recognize when grown-ups are being unkind. He knows EM was often mean to me, but he still remembers the sweet moments he shared with her. I don't blame him for that, even if it makes me quietly grumble sometimes. Fast forward a year and we had built a real home. B's room was filled with toys, books, a cozy bed, and plenty of clothes. Our fridge was always stocked. I even managed to treat myself to the queen-sized bed of my dreams. We weren't rolling in money, but we were safe, stable, and happy. Something I never thought possible when EM controlled every part of my life. Oh, and there's more. I'd started dating an amazing guy I met at a work luncheon my boss hosted. We hit it off right away, and to top it off, B adores him. Life, at long last, was beginning to feel like ours. After having NC with EM for the year, I was surprised to see I had a message over Facebook from one of my siblings. They asked me if I'd be willing to talk to EM and try mending the rift because she missed B and wanted to mend our broken family for B's sake. I didn't want to. I felt like this was some ploy to get her claws into B and hurt me again. Just looking at the message made me have a PTSD episode. I was scared. Very scared. After my boyfriend helped me to calm down and told me that talking to my therapist might help, I called her and set up an emergency appointment. My therapist told me that EM reaching out might be sincere and the most that will happen is the visit going bad and I go back to NC again. I wasn't worried about there being an argument. I was worried EM might steal, or worse kidnap me if I turned my back. My paranoia was all over the place. After giving it a lot of thought, I decided I wasn't going to let fear control my decisions anymore. I messaged my sibling and we agreed to meet for lunch in a public place. I said I'd bring B with me, but made it clear that my boyfriend would be coming too. My sibling didn't love that idea, but reluctantly agreed. Red flag number 1. As the lunch date approached, EM sent me a message on Facebook, saying how much she missed B and that she had tons of gifts waiting for him. I replied politely, saying I was sure he'd appreciate them. She then said she had something for me too. To avoid starting a fight, I just thanked her and told her I'd see her at lunch. She responded with, "You're going to be shocked when you open your gift." Red flag number 2. By the time the day arrived, my anxiety was through the roof. I kept second-guessing myself, but my boyfriend reassured me he'd be by my side the entire time, and if I got uncomfortable, we'd grab B and get out of there, no questions asked. Eventually, we got in the car and headed to the restaurant. Trying to be generous, my boyfriend offered to cover the bill for everyone. EM, of course, took full advantage, ordering the most expensive thing on the menu, plus a pricey cocktail and an extra dish to take home. I was annoyed, but my boyfriend just smiled and said she could have whatever she wanted. After we ate, EM hugged B and gave him all the gifts she had brought. He was thrilled and couldn't wait to bring them home, but then EM told him the toys were staying at her house and he could come over to play with them whenever he wanted. I nearly choked on my drink. EM gave me a smug, fake smile and said she had my gift too, personally delivered. She handed me a large brown envelope. I hesitated, half worried it would contain something crazy like white powder, but I opened it, and instantly wished I hadn't. It was a petition for grandparents' rights. I lost it. I stood up, threw the papers back at her, and yelled that she would never get near B again, not unless it was over my dead, rotting body. I grabbed B and my boyfriend, and we walked out. B was disappointed he couldn't keep the toys, But I promised I'd buy every single one of them for him myself. We didn't need EM or her manipulations in our lives. The only upside to that entire train wreck? They were stuck with the bill. Update. In the last update, EM had officially filed for grandparents' rights. I'd never dealt with the legal system before, and honestly, I was terrified, especially of what lies EM might come up with to make me look unfit. After talking things over with my boyfriend and therapist, they both strongly encouraged me to get legal representation. I ended up hiring an amazing family law attorney, compassionate, no-nonsense, and brutally honest, which was exactly what I needed. I had saved flash drives full of audio recordings, proof of the abuse I endured, including countless arguments and confrontations. Unfortunately, my attorney broke the news that they couldn't be used. Where we lived, both parties have to consent to being recorded for audio to be admissible in court. That crushed me at first. But my attorney reassured me that we still had a strong case: EM's prior arrest, the officer's statement from the night I moved out, my boyfriend's written testimony, and the fact that EM hadn't seen B in over a year would all weigh heavily in our favor. At the hearing, EM went full Karen mode, putting on her best victim act. She claimed I was the aggressor the night I left, that I smoked weed around B, and even accused me of being a sex worker who brought random men home and slept with them in front of my child. The lies just kept coming. I honestly expected her to start foaming at the eyes. And then, as if that weren't disgusting enough, she accused my boyfriend of molesting B. The judge calmly asked if she had any proof to support these outrageous claims. EM looked at me with this syrupy, fake motherly voice and said she didn't want to ruin her precious daughter's life, but felt forced into this for the sake of her grandchild. That was it for me. I couldn't help but let out an audible snort. When my siblings testified, all they did was repeat EM's lies without any actual evidence. The judge quickly dismissed their statements as hearsay but did order me to take a drug test, just to be thorough. When it was my turn on the stand, I described the years of emotional abuse, manipulation, and theft I endured. I told the court how EM had repeatedly stolen from me, even cutting up my debit card once when I refused to give her the PIN. I also reminded the judge how she tried to get the police to arrest me and force me to hand over my banking information. After I stepped down, the officer who had responded the night I left was called in. The moment he entered the courtroom, EM turned pale. The officer backed up everything I had said. EM couldn't keep quiet. She started yelling at him, calling him a liar, but the judge had the police report in front of him. He warned her that any more outbursts would result in a contempt of court charge. My therapist and boyfriend also testified. With all that evidence, the judge denied EM's petition for grandparents' rights. He even said she seemed in serious need of counseling and showed signs of emotional instability that he found disturbing. EM was shaking with rage but managed to keep her composure, for once, and silently stormed out of the courtroom, shooting me a cold glare as she passed. Outside, I told my siblings that EM would never be part of mine or B's life again. I also made it clear, if they continued siding with her, they'd be cut off too. Eventually, my boyfriend, who's now my husband, and I decided to leave all that behind. Since I didn't have any supportive family, our wedding was small and intimate, with only his side attending. I didn't mind. His family had fully embraced both B and me. We moved into a bigger house just a few miles away from where I used to live and agreed to start building a future together. We wanted to give B a little sibling. Being a mom has always been my anchor, and I'm damn proud of the job I've done. My husband even adopted B legally, making him his own in every way. You'd think that would be the happy ending, but nope. EM is like herpes, she just keeps coming back. Part 4 coming soon. Update. I know this might feel like a novel, but honestly, writing this all out has been therapeutic. Just to clarify, everything I'm sharing didn't happen all at once. These events stretched over several years, a long pattern of my EM being toxic and unsafe. Thank you for listening, it truly means a lot. Eventually, my boyfriend proposed, and we got married in a simple courthouse ceremony with just his parents and siblings there. It wasn't the dream wedding I'd once imagined, but we used the money we saved to go on an amazing honeymoon, which was totally worth it. Fast forward 2 years. I was still in therapy, and it helped having a supportive husband, someone I could lean on when my PTSD would flare up. But then I started noticing some distance between us. Long story short, he'd been cheating on me with a coworker for over a year. I packed up and moved B and me back to our old apartment complex, not the same unit, but the transition was smooth. I had some vacation time, so I took a few days off work to get everything settled. The divorce went through, and we agreed to stay on good terms for B's sake. A few months passed, and I started to heal. B and I were spending more quality time together, and I threw myself into supporting his new obsession, Little League. He made the school team right away, and I couldn't have been prouder. It was a welcome change from the non-stop video games. Then, out of nowhere, I got another Facebook message from one of my siblings. Thanks to therapy, I didn't react the way I once might have. They asked me to forgive EM, that she was truly sorry and wanted to repair the damage she caused. But if EM was that sorry, why didn't she reach out herself? She has my Facebook. I asked my sibling why now? They said it was because of the divorce, that it wasn't fair for me to be alone. That threw me off, because I hadn't told anyone in my family about the divorce. I've been almost completely no contact with them, so I'm assuming someone just spread the news. I told my sibling I was doing fine and still had no interest in reconnecting with EM, especially after she stood in court and lied about me. They insisted EM had been going to therapy and realized her mistakes, but thought that if she reached out herself, I'd just block her. When I found out that EM was finally seeing a therapist, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she was starting to realize how damaging her behavior had been. Maybe she'd finally recognized that her abuse had destroyed our relationship. And because I'm apparently too trusting for my own good, I made the mistake of letting my guard down. I asked one of my siblings if they could stay at my apartment and look after me for the weekend while I went on a short, much-needed spa trip with some friends. Just a quick getaway, 2 days to unwind. I made it very clear, do not give EM my address. As a backup, I also asked my ex-husband to check in on the apartment now and then, just to be safe. I thought this arrangement would give me a chance to bond a little with extended family, while I enjoyed some rest. But barely 3 hours into my spa trip, I got a panicked phone call from my ex-husband. My apartment had been trashed. The walls were smeared with dog feces, and police were on the scene, asking for me. My heart dropped. I rushed back, an hour-long drive filled with dread. When I arrived, I was immediately arrested, charged with drug possession, child neglect, and endangerment. I was in total shock. I don't use drugs. I don't even smoke weed. At most, I'll have a drink once in a while. That's it. I couldn't make sense of what was happening. At the station, the interrogation began. I was bombarded with questions about the condition of my home and accusations EM had made. She had apparently told them that B was found covered in bruises and dog feces. We didn't even own a dog. And the drugs? They were found sitting on the kitchen counter, planted there while I was gone. When I learned it was EM who called the police, my PTSD hit me like a truck. I had a full-blown breakdown and ended up hospitalized for a psych evaluation. Most of that time is a blur. I fainted several times from sheer stress. The on-call therapist later told me I'd been screaming, asking why she was doing this to me, and saying I wanted to die. After 3 days in a medicated fog, an officer came to speak with me again. He told me that EM had refused to let me be examined at a hospital, claiming she already knew he was abused because she had seen the bruises herself. Luckily, my ex-husband stepped in and asked the authorities to remove B from her custody. Once B was medically examined, it turned out he had no significant bruises, just a few scrapes from Little League. He told the officers that EM had told him she was going to be his new mother. He also said he was afraid of her, that she was scary, and he thought she might hurt him if he tried to run. Both of my siblings were questioned, and in an attempt to protect themselves, they confessed. They admitted that EM had orchestrated the entire plan, waiting until I was out of town and B was in their care so she and another sibling could break into my apartment, destroy it, and plant drugs. EM, of course, denied everything, but the mounting evidence and her clear pattern of unstable behavior led to her arrest. She was charged with domestic abuse, theft, destruction of property, filing a false police report, and the most serious, kidnapping. My siblings were also charged. It was also revealed that EM had never been in therapy at all. That part was a complete lie. She hadn't changed, she was simply waiting for the right moment to strike again. Since then, I've been granted a permanent restraining order against EM and my siblings. They are legally forbidden from contacting me in any way, and if any relative tries to reach out on their behalf, that would count as a violation and result in further charges. I've accepted that I'll probably be in therapy for the rest of my life, and now B is seeing the same therapist as well. My ex-husband and I are working through our own healing process together. Knowing that EM won't be in prison forever, we've even started talking about the possibility of relocating to another state for safety and peace of mind. Quick update for those who are curious. My boss has been absolutely incredible throughout all of this. He hired a professional cleaning crew to restore my apartment and even replaced my living room TV, which made me extremely happy. Some people might wonder why I still have any relationship with my ex-husband. We're in therapy, working to rebuild trust, and while it's a long process, we still care deeply for one another. We're committed to supporting each other and being the best co-parents we can be for B. He pays child support, takes B to baseball games, and the bond between them is incredibly strong. B already lost his biological father. I can't let him lose his stepfather, too. For now, we're maintaining a low-pressure friendship while we both focus on healing. B's therapy has been incredibly beneficial for him, especially as he processes the loss of his birth father and the trauma caused by his grandmother. I've recently started reconnecting with a cousin who also understands how unhinged EM can be. They even told me that after I moved out, EM would rant about making me suffer for stealing B and for costing her the money she thought she deserved. It's a chilling reminder that greed and mental illness make a dangerous combination. Second edit. I wanted to quickly add this since I realized I had skimmed over some important details. My mother and siblings were all sentenced to prison for their involvement in destroying my apartment, attempting to frame me, and kidnapping B. My sister received a 5-year sentence, my brother got 8 years, and my mother was sentenced to 15. I didn't attend the sentencing, but I was sent copies of each judgment. As part of her sentence, my mother was also ordered to undergo a psychological evaluation. It's been a few days since I last posted, and a lot of people have suggested we consider relocating to another state. It's something we're definitely thinking about. Both my ex and I have jobs that allow us to transfer, so logistically it's possible, but I'm hesitant to pull B away from the only stable family he's known, my ex-husband's side. I've cut all contact with my own family, so they're not a factor. My ex is reluctant to move. He feels that leaving would mean they win, that we're letting them scare us into starting over. I try to explain that this is about safety, not pride. He understands, but it's still an ongoing conversation, one we have privately when B isn't around. We've even agreed on a potential place to move if we go through with it. It would be a big change, but probably a good one. Another factor we're grappling with is our relationship. We're not married anymore and we currently live separately. My ex believes that if we do decide to move, we'd need to either remarry or at least live together to make things work. I haven't made a final decision, but I'm leaning toward moving B and me back in with him, for safety and peace of mind. Especially since some of my mother's relatives still know where we live now. It's a lot to process, and I'm working through it with my therapist, who agrees that a fresh start could be really good for us. Update. It's likely that I'll be in therapy for the rest of my life, and my son has now started therapy as well. Bill and I are also attending couples counseling as we work through our own issues. While my mother will be spending the next 15 years in prison for everything she's done, I have no intention of being anywhere near this place when she's released. I have a permanent restraining order against her and my siblings. None of them are allowed to contact me for any reason. If any family member tries to reach out on their behalf, it would count as a violation of the order and carry legal consequences. Bill and I have been seriously considering relocating to a different state for a fresh start. We're fortunate that our jobs are transferable, so work isn't a concern. The difficult part is leaving behind Bill's family, especially since my son and I have grown very close to them even after Bill and I divorced. Their support means everything to us, but my priority is keeping my son and myself far away from this area once the chaos gets out of prison. Update, I just got off the phone with a victim's advocate from the state police. He informed me that my mother initially refused to participate in the mandatory psychological evaluation in prison, claiming it violated her rights. After being warned that her refusal could lead to an extended sentence, she finally gave in. According to the VA, it took 4 sessions for the prison psychologist to get her to talk at all. But once she did, everything she said confirmed what I've always known: my mother is a textbook sociopath. The VA is hopeful that therapy and prison time might help her, but knowing how manipulative and deceptive she can be, I'm not optimistic. Update. I genuinely thought that putting 5 states between us would be enough to keep my unhinged mother away from me and my son, but I was wrong. She was released early from prison due to COVID-related protocols. Apparently, there was an outbreak at her facility, and several inmates, including her, were let out. I was never officially notified, which I absolutely should have been. Instead, I found out through a Facebook message from my in-laws. For those unfamiliar with the full story, my mother tried to frame me by having my brother trash my apartment, smear dog feces on the walls, and plant drugs in the kitchen. She made false abuse allegations against me, trying to get me arrested and take custody of my son. At the time, my sister was babysitting him while I was away at a spa with friends from work. I had only been there a couple of hours when Bill, my then ex, now husband, called me to tell me what was happening. I rushed home, only to be arrested and interrogated. The ordeal triggered such a severe anxiety attack that I was hospitalized and placed under psychiatric care after expressing suicidal thoughts. My mother kidnapped my son during all this chaos. But her plan fell apart quickly. Bill had legally adopted him, and the authorities removed him from her custody almost immediately. She was arrested after both of my siblings confessed everything during questioning. Throughout my life, my mother has done unspeakable things, from physically abusing me to stealing from me and trying to completely control my role as a parent. She even once tried to have me arrested for refusing to give her access to my own bank account. I went no contact with her after my son and I moved out, but years later, that final series of events led to her and my siblings being sentenced to prison. Since then, Bill and I remarried in a beautiful double wedding with my best friend Barbara and her husband Dave. We all relocated to a new state and started over. I transferred to a branch office here, and Bill now works remotely. Together, we're doing well financially, and our flexible schedules allow us to spend meaningful weekends together as a family. I thought life was finally settling into something close to perfect, even with the pandemic, until about a week ago. I was scrolling through Facebook at work during a short break between calls when I saw a message from my in-laws. My mother had been released from prison and had shown up at their home, demanding to know where my son and I were. They refused to tell her and slammed the door in her face. My stomach dropped as I read the message. Right after that, I noticed I had a message request from someone named Deb. The message just said, "Where are you?" I wasn't naive, I knew it was my mother trying to contact me using a fake profile. I blocked the account immediately and contacted the police department in my former state. Unfortunately, they said there wasn't much they could do unless I could prove it was her behind the message. I figured I'd be safe if I just kept blocking any unfamiliar accounts, but I was wrong again. My Facebook profile lists where I work, and she must have seen it. She contacted my old workplace, and one of my former coworkers, who had been clearly instructed not to share any information, carelessly revealed the city we had moved to. When my former boss found out, he fired that employee for violating confidentiality. He personally called me to explain what happened and to apologize for the breach. Since then, he's spoken to my current boss to make sure nothing like that happens again. Now, everyone at my new job has been instructed not to share any information about me. If anyone calls asking for me, they're either redirected to voicemail or put on hold until they hang up. As expected, my mother somehow got the number to my workplace and has been calling constantly, up to 10 times a day, trying to reach me. Thankfully, my coworkers have been incredible and haven't given in to her unhinged demands. Instead, they just put her on hold until she eventually hangs up. To further protect myself, I ditched my old phone carrier and upgraded to a new plan with a brand new phone and number. Unfortunately, my direct work line is publicly listed and functional nationwide, which she discovered through my LinkedIn profile. Since then, she's been relentlessly calling that number as well, though she hasn't left any voicemails, until she managed to trick me. She called from a number I didn't recognize, and assuming it was a client, I answered. The call has left me shaken. Here's how it went. Me, good morning, this is OP. Mother, hi, OP. This is your mother. Me, Mom, you know you're not allowed to contact me. Mother, I know, but I just want to talk. Me, I don't want to talk to you. Mother, listen, OP. You can't avoid me forever. This little act of yours has gone on long enough, don't you think? Isn't it time you put your selfishness aside and did what's best for Brandon? He needs his grandmother. Me, are you serious? Why would my son need someone who tried to kidnap him? You had, brother, trash my apartment, smear dog feces on the walls, and plant drugs in my kitchen. If Bill hadn't legally adopted him, who knows what would have happened? You need to stay away from us. Mother, you've never been fit to be a mother, OP. I could give Brandon a better life than you or that brood you're living with. You can keep that man, but let my grandson be with real family, one that truly loves him. Me, absolutely furious, over my dead body. I immediately hung up and blocked the number. I then contacted the police again and updated them. Now they finally recognize her as a credible threat to both me and my son, and they've started looking for her. She's lost the house she used to live in, so at this point, we have no idea where she might be hiding. One thing I'm grateful for is the flexibility of my job. I can work remotely from home if I choose. I've loved working in the office because my coworkers are wonderful, and I enjoy meeting with clients face to face. But thanks to this situation, I now have to invite clients to my home, which is causing even more stress and anxiety. With school starting soon, I've made sure to complete all the emergency contact paperwork, clearly listing who is allowed to pick up my son. I want to be prepared in case my mother tries to pull something at his school. Barbara and Dave are fully in the loop and have been helping keep an eye out while my son and I stay mostly hidden away until this nightmare ends. For our safety, we already have 2 guns secured in a safe at home. It's password protected and our son doesn't know the combination. I've been going to the shooting range to become more comfortable with handling mine and to manage my fear around firearms. I'm also seriously thinking about enrolling in self-defense classes. Update. Trigger warning, this post contains mentions of sexual assault. Hi Reddit family. It's been a while, but I'm finally in a place where I can share an update. For those who remember, my mother has been abusive for as long as I can recall. She's stolen from me, emotionally and physically abused me, attempted to access my bank information, and even tried to frame me with drugs in an attempt to kidnap my son. And honestly, that's just scratching the surface of the chaos she's put me through. The last time I had contact with her, she was relentlessly calling my workplace, harassing me, calling me unfit, and demanding custody of my son. At that point, she was actively being sought by police in my former state due to an outstanding warrant. She went into hiding, but that didn't stop her from continuing the harassment and making threats. My son Brandon, who's nearly 11 now, sees her for who she really is. He once told me, in a moment that broke my heart a little, that if he were ever forced to go with her, he'd rather throw himself in front of a semi. As grim as that sounds, I understand where he's coming from, and I feel the same. Because of her endless calls and the disturbing voicemails she left at my workplace, my employer had no choice but to let me go. It was devastating at first, but thankfully, I found a new job pretty quickly. I now work full-time from home and earn more than I did before. We turned our spare room into a home office, and honestly, not having to dress up every day and getting to work in my comfiest clothes has been a blessing. The best part of all this? I get to spend more time with my family. Bill and I are in a really good place right now. Our relationship is stronger than ever. And I'm excited to share that we're expecting our first child together. I found out 2 months ago, and it's brought us even closer. Somehow Psycho Bitch found out and I don't know how. We didn't announce anything on Facebook or tell anyone but my ILs. I secretly think one of them let it slip to a relative and the snowball effect made its way to my mother's ear because I started getting harassing messages from my uncles, both of whom were convicted pedophiles, demanding to know where I am, and no amount of ignoring them or threats of police were making them leave me alone. Eventually I blocked the accounts when I saw ignoring them wasn't working, and for a time things were quiet and I felt I could breathe a little. I want to confess something, and it is embarrassing. My grandfather on my mother's side molested all of his kids, my mother included. They grew up believing it was the norm, and my grandmother did nothing to stop it and let it go on, even encouraged it. My uncles were convicted of raping and molesting my cousin, who is now in therapy for life. I don't want to go into more grim detail as it is traumatic even for me. I was also molested by my uncles when I was a kid, and I know no amount of jail time has cured them of their sick and twisted ways of thought. Therapy has been instrumental in me moving past my traumatic childhood and given me the tools to be stronger and a good mother to my son. You can see why I want to keep my children as far away from them as possible. About 2 weeks ago, while I was working, I received a call on my work number. To my horror, it was my mother again. I later discovered that she had hired a private investigator to track down both my new workplace and my home address. I was consumed with a level of anger I had never felt before. I can't fully describe the call. Most of it was her screaming threats, not only about taking my son but also vowing to take my unborn child, even saying she'd rip the baby from my body if she had to. Thankfully, I had a recording app active on my phone and captured the call for the police. After hanging up, I traced the number and discovered it was a Google Voice line, essentially a virtual number that masks the real phone number behind it. I actually use one myself for my personal cell to keep my actual number private. I contacted the police, and they came to listen to the recording. Unfortunately, since we couldn't confirm whether she was in my previous state or my current one, and because the number was untraceable due to being virtual, their hands were tied. Bill and I decided to try reaching out to Google for help. After several days of back and forth and frustrating dead ends, we finally reached someone who took action. They shut down the Google Voice account and blocked the private number she had linked to it. That must have enraged her, because shortly afterward, she called my work number again, this time using a real number. That call finally gave me what I needed. It turned out to be my uncle's number. I could hear him clearly in the background making horrific threats, saying he would rape and kill my son. That was the breaking point for me. After everything, that moment ignited something in me. I knew I had to take action to protect my children. I immediately contacted the police in my old state and sent them the call recording through Google Drive. My company uses Google services for everything, so it made the process easier. This time, I wasn't going to let anything, or anyone, slip through the cracks. Within a few days, the police had a search warrant for my uncle's house. From what I was told, my uncle resisted and was arrested after getting zapped by a taser. Mother, who thought she was so smart, was found hiding in a closet and taken into custody. My other uncle is also now in custody for the continued harassment of me. They searched my uncle's computer and found files upon files of CP, pictures of me and my son, chat logs between him and underage girls of varying degrees of disgusting, including disgusting pictures. My other uncle confessed to knowing everything and agreed to testify for a lesser charge. The charges against all three of them are extensive enough to ensure they'll be locked up for over 10 years, and this time, my mother won't be able to use the pandemic as a loophole to escape justice. I finally feel free. My family is safe, and I'm genuinely okay. I've been informed that bail has been denied, and while I'll need to return to my former state to testify, it's likely the court won't hear the case for another 2 years due to COVID delays and a backlog of cases. That's perfectly fine with me. Thank you all so much for being here through everything, Reddit fam. Your support has truly meant the world to me.